Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to our Rav Gottlieb's articles. As always, I refer to Rav Gottlieb as the Rebbe Shlita. We are on essay number 4 in the back of Giving, translation of Matan Torah, page 153. The purpose of creation is fulfilled by our cleaving to God. In truth, cleaving to God is devekut. So this essay is very similar to the second essay in the back here, but the language is a little bit different to hone in on the nuances of similarity of form, as that is the language of the Baal Sulam, whereas in contrast, devekut has been a common word used throughout the sages' works. Similarity of form is something a bit more psychologically practical that we can understand, and so the language continues. We need to avoid whatever might distance and separate us from God, and we are to embrace whatever brings us closer to God. Of course, spirituality does not take up any space, and distance in the spiritual sphere is not a physical distance. We are not being advised to move physically, up or down, or in any physical direction. Rather, spiritual distance is a matter of a difference in character. Everything spiritually is a matter of character. This we see even from a psychological point of view. For example, we might find two brothers sitting next to one another physically. But people who know them well would say that they're as far from one another as east is from west. That is, one brother is good and wise, while the other is evil and foolish. So we see that the distance between people can refer not to their physical distance, but to their difference in character. As we begin to acquire a more divine-like character, then we get closer to God by virtue of this similarity of form. The only character we can ascribe to God is what is implied by God's perfection. God has no need or lack, and so God has no desire to fulfill a need or lack. This is the divine-like character that we need to acquire, and it inevitably leads to the desire to give selflessly. It's a lofty target, but we all have the capacity. We wouldn't be alive here on this earth if we didn't have the opportunity to elevate our spiritual consciousness to the point of being in similarity of form with the Creator. Just as He is compassionate and merciful, so too we must be compassionate and merciful. And the godly soul within us provides us the capacity to do so, which is why our work is to, in a way, reveal and connect to the divine soul within, the true self, in contrast to the false self of the ego. Rather, the true, innermost, pure point of connection between us and the source of all reality. The path to attaining similarity of form includes two categories. One, we need to divorce ourselves from self-love and the desire to receive pleasures. I think more specifically, the desire to receive pleasures for oneself alone. But it's saying receive pleasures because the first step before we can get to a more refined receiving, like receiving in order to give, which is really the highest level. So first and foremost, we need to work on receiving less and giving more. Baal Sulam sharpens the definition of this prescription when he applies the principle known from Jewish law. Quote, the necessary should neither be condemned nor praised, end quote. We are not supposed to disconnect from the necessities dictated by the nature that God planted within us. Rather, we are told to avoid luxuries and extravagances. Unfortunately, we do see plenty of luxury and extravagance in the Jewish world today. It's simply put a matter of a lack of education and a lack of connection to these inner values. The Torah for what it is, the connection to the inner dimensions, and Kabbalah, which is called Chochmat Emet for a reason. It's the wisdom of truth, because the wisdom within it can bring us to the truth. And the truth of the matter is that we are here to correct our hearts and bring ourselves up to the state of similarity of form, being giving and loving, and being altruistic in contrast to egoistic. And it's rare that the luxuries and extravagances have any justification in regards to our inner work. It could be you have one-off wealthy individual who has a big space in order to have huge Shabbos tables and do some type of Jewish outreach. I, for one, merited to experience many Shabbos meals at the Machlis family in Jerusalem. And I can tell you that you don't need a lot of space to host 100 plus people. If there is a will, there is a way. Just as a reference point, if someone was to make the justification for having a large home in order to host more people, fine. It might not be as comfortable, it might be tight, but in regards to what we can do and focus on in our inner work, the extravagancies and the luxuries are not as important, surely. Far from. By disconnecting from the need for luxuries and extravagances, we create the possibility of attaining similarity form with God, who needs nothing. He's perfect. Therefore, this prescription is referred to in the Torah by the verse, quote, be holy, as brought down in Vayikra or Leviticus 19:2. Holy in Hebrew is Kodesh. The root word in Hebrew meaning to sanctify. What does it mean to sanctify, to make holy? To sanctify something is to make it unique, distinct, and separate. Back in the times of the Holy Temple, one could sanctify particular livestock, cattle, in order to be brought as korbanos, as offerings to the Holy Temple, to the Beit HaMikdash. Interesting side note, one could designate a korban, designate something to be holy for sacrifice, with their mind alone. And I think that alludes to the quantum consciousness of reality, being that our minds can actually affect reality in a very tangible way. And we see that today with quantum mechanics. So too, someone could designate and infuse an animal with holiness by saying, I want cow number 8 to be the korban. And even if you're halfway across the world, 6,000 miles apart, somehow, some way, that thought and that decision changes the status of said cow. Now, the point here is that to make something separate and distinct, so that cow is now separate, distinct, and unique in relation to the rest of the cattle there, because it has been designated to be sacrificed. So too in relation to our inner desires and aspects of our consciousness, the notion of giving is unique, distinct, and separate in relation to receiving, which is our natural state of being, our egoism. So something holy, something above, something separate, which is why we refer to in the Kedusha of davening, of our prayer service, we refer to the Creator as Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy. Because the Creator is completely and utterly unique, distinct, and separate from all of reality. Because the universe in reality itself is an expression of lack, because it is the vessel that is to be filled with the light of the Creator. The Creator is perfect and has no lack. Therefore, He is holy, holy, holy. Because He's unique from the characteristic that is creation itself, being the character of receiving. So too, we must be holy. We must rise to the level of giving, as that characteristic is unique in contrast to the receiving and the egoism that all of creation is representing. Number 2, we need to learn to love the other. Just as God has love for the other, and God's only desires to benefit his creations and to give them goodness and joy, so we are enjoined to acquire this character. Heart, leiv, is called desire, ratzon, and a new heart is the desire to give selflessly to others. In contrast to the old heart, which is desire to receive only for oneself. Only when we learn Torah and fulfill mitzvot with the intention that God will create in us a new heart, then our connection to Torah is in the correct framework. What is a framework? What is the consciousness that we are to enact to bring us to our desired outcome? Based on the words here, we want a new heart, meaning a new desire. We want a second nature. So we must imagine it. We must think about it and actually cause and incite and inspire our emotions, our heart to actually feel what it would be like to be in a state of pure giving and pure loving, and even more so to imagine living in a society where everyone was at that level of consciousness. Throughout the entire world today, arguably the most popular spiritual and mindfulness notion that people are subscribing to is the law of attraction. You can draw reality, you can affect reality, and draw that which you desire by thinking about it, desiring it, meditating on it. That is classical. That is a classical understanding in regards to Judaism being koach hamoshech, power of drawing. We draw reality by means of our desire. That's also called tefillah, prayer. We are drawing a future reality as we pray, for example, in the service of the Amidah. We pray for the Beit HaMikdash, Mashiach, and for abundance and for healing and for peace and the like. We're praying for future scenarios and future realities that have yet to manifest, and we're drawing it into the now. And the more intention, the more kavanah we have, the greater the prayer. In New Age terminology, the more intention and awareness, consciousness, and feeling that we have in the midst of the said prayer, we in theory are then drawing it in a stronger way, and drawing it more so into our reality. So if we desire to acquire a new heart, if we want to draw into our reality the new heart, then we are to imagine it and pray for it and desire it as being a product of our Torah learning and our doing of mitzvot and our good deeds. Meaning to say we should imagine, according to Rabbi Seinu, our rabbis, the Baal Sulam, Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag, the Rabbi Tzila, that in the midst of our Torah, mitzvot, and maisim toivim, good deeds, everything that we do, we should demand that the Creator bless us with the light of emunah, the light of faith, as translated. I don't think it's a good translation personally. Emunah is a much deeper, much more powerful word. Emunah is related to the word uman, craftsman. Emunah is a craft, it's a tool, it's something that we build and develop. And all of our inner work is really centered around it. And the tools that Emunah provides, that Emunah is, allows us to slowly but surely come to similarity of form more so. We just need to desire it. We need to imagine ourselves, quite literally, as having already achieved a perfect emunah, as written in the beginning of Emunas Rabo in Shamati, as written by the Rebbe Tzila, as he heard it from the Baal HaSulam. And he goes as far as to say that we should feel it in our limbs, because we need to make a mind and heart connection. Not only should we think it, but the thoughts, the machshavot, need to cause an arousal of the heart and actually have the emotion. As far as quantum mechanics are concerned, the mind is electric, thoughts are electric, and the heart is magnetic. And by means of our thoughts, and by means of our emotions and our feelings, we are emitting electrical and magnetic information, so to speak, into the unified field. As there is a unified field theory, quantum mechanics. Unified field is the absolute oneness of reality, because at the most basic subatomic level, everything is one giant wave of energy, and that there is, in theory, infinite possibilities that can manifest by means of this unified field. In the language of Kabbalah, a field in Hebrew is sadeh. I find it very interesting to make these synchronicities between the English language and Hebrew and how it connects to our inner work, spiritual understanding, being that the unified field theory, we are the unified field. The sadeh is a code word for the Shekhinah, the divine presence, meaning the global soul, the sum total of all souls of humanity. We are the unified field. It's not for no reason that the Creator, by his hand, put it into the minds of scientists to call the unified theory of reality the unified field theory. Therefore, it's synonymous with the global soul theory, the Shekhinah theory, whatever you want to call it. The point is that we are all interconnected, and when we think and we feel, we emit information into this unified field. The Baal HaSulam says that if there is a community, a kibbutz, for example, in Israel, totally non-religious, don't believe in God whatsoever, by very means of their desire, their ratzon, if they want rain to come, by means of their desire, they will draw rain. Meaning you don't have to even believe in God, at an extreme example, to be able to draw reality upon oneself. How much more so do we have the capacity as partners in creation, or co-creators, if you will, to draw the ultimate reality of a new heart, to have emunah shlema, to truly love and give to the other. But in a way, we have to fake it till we make it, because we're not there. When we reflect on ourselves, we see, with heavenly assistance, the great ego within us, and truly how far we are. But by means of that awareness, we slowly but surely inch towards getting that new heart. But what needs to be clarified again and again throughout all of this inner work, both in Sir V'Dimyon, the visualization techniques in the imagination that allows us to have reference points of feelings and experiences that we can draw upon as tools throughout our lives, so that the Creator decides at the end of the day. He's in charge of all. He did all, does all, and will do all actions. We can co-create and imagine and try to manifest as much as we want, but only He can give us the new heart. But again, the unified field theory is to express that we are unified as a single soul, and we can expedite, so to speak, our inner work by means of this visualization, by means of these meditative techniques. That's a part of the inner work. Rabbeinu have painted it quite clearly and simply. So to finish the essay, the desire to give selflessly is not the essential matter. Rather, the essential matter is the acquisition of a second nature, as we stated, which should be understood as the love of the other. And the love of the other brings us to want to give selflessly. For it's natural that when we love and honor another person, then we want to give to that person and make him or her rejoice. The second nature is the new heart. They're synonymous terms. Synonymous with the similarity of form, synonymous with dveikut, with adhesion or cleaving to the Creator. In essence, this is the leaving of Egypt. This is Yetziat Mitzrayim. As we are stuck in our constricted consciousness, the echo chamber, if you will, of only pleasing and serving ourselves. So to finally step out of our tsar, of our constricted consciousness, and be free to actually give without any personal desire, and to just give for love and giving's sake to the other. That is the leaving of Egypt. That is entering into the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael. As the Kabbalists teach us, the Baal Shalom illuminates that Eretz, land, is from the language of Ratzon, it's a desire. And Yisrael is split into Yashar, Kel, straight to God. Eretz Yisrael is the desire to be straight to God. It's the desire to be constantly in similarity form, constantly in dveikut, to have a new heart, to have a second nature, to have a life connected to the highest consciousness in order to give nachal ruach, to give pleasantness to the Creator, to others. And what I'm honing in on is the power and strength of our thoughts and our mind to meditate and visualize what it would feel like to be in similarity of form. What would it feel like if everyone was in similarity of form? And whatever feelings, emotions that might manifest, to make a reference point of them, and to build upon that, and be able to recall that experience throughout our days, so that we can quite literally tap into that frequency, tap into that consciousness, and inch ever so closer to the miracle by the Creator's hand to bring us to Eretz Yisrael and out of our prison of egoism, being Mitzrayim. Tov, thanks for tuning in. Next essay is Levels of Self-Love. I'm going to go into the details of the different levels of our development, our ego, to eventually get to our innermost godly state. God willing. All the best.